Hello guys, this is Mansi Pawar and I welcome you all on the Pharma Intellect YouTube channel. So today's topic of discussion is investigational new drug application. This is one of the important applications in the drug discovery and development process that we submit to the US FDA. So before this, I have also made a video on the drug discovery and development process. If you haven't watched it, please go and check it out. In this video, we'll see what is IND application. When the IND application is submitted to the US FDA, what are the contents of IND, and finally we'll see what are the types of IND. So what is an investigational new drug application? Before this, let's understand the main stage gates in the drug discovery and development process. So first, it starts with the NC discovery. NC is the new chemical entity. So this is a new chemical entity which has not been previously approved in any of the country by any of the regulatory agency. So once we have the NC which treats any particular disease, we test that NC molecule in the preclinical settings. So preclinical studies are nothing but the testing of NC molecule on the animals to know its safety and efficacy. After that, the IND application is filed to the US FDA. Once the IND application is granted, the clinical studies are done in which we test the investigational new drug in the humans. After that, the NDA application is filed. The FDA reviews the NDA application and give us the approval. So IND application is nothing but a request to the FDA for authorization to administer an investigational drug to humans. It is required before starting clinical trials in the US. So after the preclinical studies, you cannot directly jump on the clinical studies. There is a pathway between that we have to follow. It is nothing but the IND application. We have to file the IND application to the US FDA. So in this pictorial format, we can see first the preclinical studies are done. The IND application is filed. After the IND application is filed, FDA reviews that application and grants us the permission to conduct the clinical studies. So this is important to remember that once the IND application is filed, the FDA has 30 days to review the application. And within these 30 days, if the FDA does not revert us back, it means that our IND application is approved and we can move forward with clinical studies. So what are the contents of IND? It is very important to know the contents of IND because it can be the interview questions who are appearing for the Regulatory Affairs Department. So the contents are divided into main three categories: animal pharmacology and toxicology studies, manufacturing information, clinical protocols, and investigator information. So animal pharmacology and toxicology studies mainly contains the preclinical data, right? The safety that we have observed in the animals, the efficacy that we have observed in the animals, the toxicity, the adverse effects that we have observed in the animals, all these data will be a part of the IND. The second one is a manufacturing information. So manufacturing information pertains to the composition, like what are the excipients that the drug product contains, manufacturer, who is the manufacturer, stability, like for how much months or the period the drug substance and the drug product remains stable, and the controls that have been used during the manufacturing of drug substance and drug product. All this information is very important because this information ensures that the product that the company has produced are consistent. The batches that the company has produced are the consistent. There is no variations between the batches. If there are the variations, it will ultimately affect the patient's health. That's why this information is very important. There should be a controls in place during the manufacturing to ensure the consistency between the batches. and all this information is a part of the IND. The third one is the clinical protocols and the investigator information. Like after the IND application is approved, we are going to study the clinical, we are going to do the clinical trials, right? So what is the design for that clinical trials? What are the protocols for the clinical trials? Who will be the part of clinical trials? What statistical methods will be used to interpret the results of clinical trials? All this information will be a part of the IND, right? And the next one is investigator information. Like who is the investigator? Generally, investigator is a physician, so his name and his qualification is also a part of the IND content, right? So I hope I am clear with the contents of IND. So next important topic is types of IND. So there are two types, by purpose classification and by category classification. So by purpose classification, there are three INDs: investigator IND, emergency use IND, and treatment IND. And by category, there are two IND: commercial IND, research, and non-commercial IND. So first we'll see by category classification. So for example, there is a pharmaceutical company who finds out the NC and has done the preclinical studies, files the IND application to perform the clinical studies, right? And the ultimate aim of these studies is to bring that product into the market, is to commercialize that product. So the IND is in this case is called as the commercial IND, right? The name itself says it all. The non-commercial IND on the other side is just for the research purpose, right? For example, there is a brilliant scientist who is working in the lab and finds out the NC molecule, or finds out a new indication for the approved molecule. Now he or she will file the research IND to the US FDA. So the intent of this IND is not to commercialize that product. It's just for the research. It's just to advance the scientific knowledge, right? So the application complexity in case of the commercial IND is complex and lengthy, while on the other side, in case of the non-commercial IND, application is less complex and smaller. The next classification is by purpose classification. So by purpose, there are three INDs: investigator IND, emergency use IND, and treatment IND. Investigator IND is submitted by a physician who initiates and conducts the investigation with the drug administered under their direct supervision, right? I hope I am clear with this statement, and this is often for studying the unapproved drugs, new indications for approved drugs, or a use in new patient population, right? कोई NC molecule है, उसका investigation चल रहा है, तो in that case the investigator IND will be submitted. अगर कोई approved drug है, उसका कोई new indication find out हुआ है, उसका investigation करना है humans में, तो in that case also the investigator IND will be filed. And if for a new patient population, for example, we have the data for the adults, but we don't have the data for the pediatric population, and now we want to test that product into the pediatric population. So in that case also the investigator IND will be submitted. The next is the emergency use IND. So this emergency use IND is submitted for the unapproved drug in life-threatening condition when there is no standard treatment and when the time is insufficient to submit a regular IND, right? For example, there is a very life-threatening condition and we don't have any other treatment, we don't have any other standard treatment, and we have an unapproved drug which is showing some promise in that disease. Then in that case, the physician will file the emergency use IND. So it is also used for the patient who do not meet the criteria of an existing study protocol, or if an approved study protocol does not exist. So what does it mean? Like First, we'll see like it is used for the patient who do not meet the criteria of existing study protocol. So, for example, there is an NCE molecule, and for that we are going to carry out the clinical trials in adults only, right? The study protocols is for adults only, and now we have a 10-year-old child who is suffering from a cancer, and in that case that NC molecule can work, right? So the existing study protocol is not fitting for that child, but as the condition is very life threatening and there is no other standard treatment, there is insufficient time to go through the standard IND. So in this case, the physician will file the emergency use IND to get the approval from the US FDA in order to give that drug molecule to that 10-year-old child right away, right? Or if an approved study protocol does not exist, it means that the protocol are not there, are not in place. The clinical trial protocols are not made yet. So in this case also, the emergency use IND will be filed. The third one is a treatment IND. So treatment IND is submitted for the experimental drugs showing promise in clinical testing. So the drug molecule, the unapproved drug molecule, which we are testing in the clinical setting, and it is showing some promise for the serious or the immediately life-threatening condition, while the final clinical work is conducted and the FDA review takes place. So इसका मतलब क्या है कि अभी हम clinical trials के बहुत initial phase में हैं, and in that case the drug molecule is showing the promise, but now there is a serious or immediately life-threatening condition, and the clinical studies are yet to done, right? The final clinical studies are yet to done, and the FDA review has to take place in future. But now there is an emergency or there is an immediately life-threatening condition. So in that case, the treatment IND is filed to the US FDA in order to give that treatment to the patients. So I hope I am clear with this IND. So in case of the emergency use IND, for that unapproved drug, we have a limited data, right? We have some preclinical data. We have a limited data for that molecule, but now as there is a life-threatening condition, the physician will file the emergency use IND in order to give that drug product to the patient, to a single patient particularly. And in case of the treatment IND, we have some clinical data, right? We have some clinical studies data of the initial stages, and in the immediately life-threatening condition, we can use that data, we can leverage that data to give that drug product to the patient population. So let's see the differences between emergency use IND and the treatment IND, because these INDs are filed in the life-threatening condition only. So what is the trigger for the emergency use IND? It is given it is filed in case of the immediate life-threatening condition, no standard treatment is available, and there is insufficient time for regular IND. While in case of the treatment IND, there is a serious or immediately life-threatening condition, there are no satisfactory alternatives, and we have some promising early evidences for that drug product. The patient scope is, in case of the emergency use IND, it is for a single patient in an emergency. While in case of the treatment IND, it is for individual patients or larger groups under a treatment protocol. So timing of use is, in case of the emergency use IND, it is before the standard IND or when the patient doesn't fit trial. And in case of the treatment IND, it is during or after the phase 2 trials before marketing approval. Data requirement: focus on urgency and potential benefit, less extensive initial data. In case of the emergency use IND, while for the treatment IND, it requires some evidences of effectiveness and acceptable safety profile. Okay, I hope I am clear with this all content. Thank you so much.